Hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. My name is Beth Ann, and today I'm doing my September wrap-up. Here is my little stack of books that I read physically. I read 9 books this month, of which, hang on, let me look at my notes here. 2 were on Kindle, 1 was an audiobook, and 2 were from the library. So yeah, 9 books, feel pretty good about that. So let's just dive into it. I think most of these I haven't talked about on the channel before because I haven't really been around lately. So first, I'm going to talk about the Remnants trilogy by Margaret Pinard. So first we have The Keening, which is the first book that I finished in the month of September. And then I read these 2 a little bit later in the month, but just going to talk about them briefly as a trilogy. The Grasping Root, and then Storm, Wrack, and Spindrift. And I am going to do a separate review video of this trilogy because I really enjoyed it. So I'm not really going to talk about them in detail right now, except just to say that I really enjoyed them. They were lovely historical fiction, and they like filled a little hole that I was having as I was moving. Although the Keening, so the family that's the focus of these books moves in the Keening, and it's traumatic and sad and awful. And I was moving, and it wasn't traumatic and sad and awful, but it's stressful to move. And so I definitely like had to put this book down for a little bit because I was like, I can't read about these people's awful move while I'm moving. But I mean, it's a great book. So that's not a critique of the book. That's just like, it was really hard to be a poor farmer in Scotland in the early 1800s. And so hard stuff happened. So anyway, these are lovely. They're an emotional roller coaster, and I will review them in their own video coming up. Okay, then the next book I finished was Traveling the Trans-Canada. If you've been around my channel for a little while, you know that I'm sort of a sucker for these sort of like travel books. So this book, it was put out by the National Geographic Society, and I'm trying to find like a good photo spread. Here's a lovely photo spread. And so it was this guy, who's a writer. It was put out in 1987 by the National Geographic Society, and he drove across pretty much the entire Trans-Canada Highway, starting all the way on the east side and ending all the way on the west side. And so he wrote an essay about each province in this book, talking about the natural landscape, his impressions driving across. He was joined by a professional photographer from the National Geographic at various points in his journey. So beautiful, gorgeous professional photos. And he hit a lot of like major cultural moments. So he made it to several festivals because he really took his time. He took like a year to do this. So he made it to several cultural festivals in various provinces. So he talks about those. So yeah, this was just sort of a lovely natural look in terms of some of the gorgeous scenery photos, and just a little bit of sort of a cultural look at the southern tier of Canada in 1987. So I really enjoyed it, but that's probably just me. Okay, then the next book I finished was on my Kindle. It was Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, which I read with my in real life but permanently remote, because we all live around the globe, book club. And that was a fun book. I'm glad I read it because it's a classic, but I felt pretty lukewarm about it. Because I don't know. I mean, nothing happened. And like, I don't need things to happen in my books, but it just, yeah, it was a lot for not much happening. So for those who don't know, Mrs. Dalloway, it's a pretty stream of consciousness book that's supposed to be a day in the life of one character, Mrs. Dalloway, who is sort of a wealthy society person in London in the early 1900s, and she's getting ready for a party. And so it's just like sort of her stream of consciousness thoughts as she's getting ready for that. And I thought it was going to be just focused on this one character and sort of her impressions and thoughts as she's going about the day. But we actually break out and get stream of consciousness stuff from several different characters, which I really liked. I liked that it wasn't just focused on her, and we got some other glimpses of British society at the time. So that was really interesting. It was a bit hit close to home because all of the stream of consciousness bits of all of these characters were they're so self-absorbed, and they're often all of them are just sort of fixated on like one thing in their lives, which is totally how my brain works. Even as I'm going around doing grocery shopping and stuff for a particular day, I'll just be sort of like fixated on something, and that just sort of keeps like surfacing through all the little things you're doing throughout the day. So that was pretty interesting and embarrassing to observe in all the characters. And they're just also self-absorbed, which of course we all are in our innermost thoughts, just our stream of consciousness. It's gonna be all about you. And so it was all about them. So it was all like, it was good. It felt like it reflected humanity. But it just wasn't that enjoyable to read, I guess. I don't know. She also uses way too many commas. I cannot with the commas. So anyway, so I'm not really sure why it didn't quite hit me right, but it was good. And definitely, yeah, reflective of humanity. So I enjoyed those aspects of it. Okay, and then I read a poetry collection, Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude by Ross Gay, with this beautiful, happy cover. I'm not going to say much about it now because I do have 2 other videos, both of which I think will be up by the time this goes up. And in each of those videos, I read a short poem from this book, just 2 of the poems that had sort of spoken to me or struck my fancy, but I really enjoyed all of the poems in this slim little collection. They're all about gratitude and joy, and in a very deep sense that finds joy and gratitude even in the midst of sadness or after sadness. So just a really, really beautiful book here. Then I read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea for my other in real life, but permanently remote because people are spread all over book club. So yeah, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. We decided to do a classic, but we've been sort of doing a lot of sci-fi, so that one popped up. And again, I'm really glad I read it, but I didn't love it, sort of like Mrs. Dalloway. So there are parts of it I loved. Unlike other people in my book club, I really loved the constant cataloging of biological organisms, because this book is essentially a Victorian travel log under the sea. And so at that time, they were sort of just discovering all these hundreds and thousands of species of fish and corals and cnidarians and all these really cool things. And so I was getting a huge kick out of just like imagining what it must have been like for the time when this was published in 1869 to be able to like read these lists of like gorgeous corals and things like that. So I actually really liked that. I'm also a biologist though, so there we go. The thing that bothered me about the book is that there's really no plot. And I could totally get into the Victorian travelogue aspect of it. That's fine. But I thought there would be more plot around this shady Captain Nemo character who's piloting the underwater submarine that our narrator and his friends are inside of. Because it is sort of, it tries to do that. It tries to pull you along with suspense about who this guy is. We know he's involved in some shady stuff with the surface dwellers. There's some conflict in history there, and I kept thinking it would be revealed at the end of the book, and it never was. And so it was just like, that part of it wasn't paced very well. It was very slow with things never being revealed. And so that kind of annoyed me a little bit. Okay, then I read Greenwood for another book club that's permanently remote, which is Margaret Pinard's Patreon book club. And I've only made one discussion for that book club so far because I'm lame, but it was a really lovely discussion, and it wasn't for this book. I had to miss this discussion as well, which is too bad because I really would have enjoyed discussing this, because I would really love to hear other people's input on this, because overall I love this book. I found that most of it was gorgeously written with really deep characters who I either sympathized with a little bit, or even if I didn't sympathize with them and didn't like them, I still found them really compelling and loved reading about them. And there's a really strong link between sort of who you are as a person and a connection with the environment, particularly with forests and trees. So there was a lot to love in this video, but there was just a whole section in the middle that I just could not stand. So I have a separate review video, which I think is already up as of the time of this video going up. So I will just link to that and you can hear me rant about it. Fun times. Okay, and then finally, the book I finished on September 30th was 1861, The Civil War Awakening by Adam Goodheart, which was an audiobook for me. This was published in 2011, and it was a lovely Civil War book because it was just about 1861. Didn't have any battles in it, none of the war part. And it was just about sort of capturing like the mood of the nation in 1861 out the outbreak of the war. So it starts out with like a whole piece about Fort Sumter and really understanding what the men in the fort were going through and what it represented for the nation. Um, and then just it really follows and describes and lays out the demographic and social changes that had happened immediately leading up to 1861 and how those were just, issues that were just ready for a spark in 1861, which really led to the start of the Civil War. I saw one review on Goodreads that referred to it as like a mood piece of the Civil War, which it totally is. It just really, I mean, not that I lived in that time and can ground truth it, but like it really feels like it captures so much of that just underlying like what the heck was going on in this country in like a cultural, psychological, sociological way that led to the Civil War that I've always felt was missing from like the more battle focused and politics focused um, things that I was presented with in my history classes in high school and even in college. I took a whole course focused on the Civil War, and it did get away a lot from the battles. And we read books that were more about those sort of sociocultural trends, but they were often about like individual pieces of it. Whereas this book is just like, we're going to look at everything over 1861, like everything that happened that wasn't a battle, and talk about what led up to that thing. So really liked that book. And if like me, you're like, what were ordinary people doing in 1861? Or like, how did Major Anderson feel in the middle of Fort Sumter in 1861? This is a really cool book. So I really enjoyed that. All right. So with that, that is what I read in September. I have a bunch of things that have been languishing on my to read pile. The biggest one is The Mysteries of Udolpho by Anne Radcliffe, which I've been buddy reading with Sandy over at Miss Reads a Lot and Amy at A Star Reads, and just have not been able to get through. And I really love it, but it's like so descriptive and so atmospheric that it just wasn't what I wanted to pick up. When I was dealing with like a stressful move and stuff, I wanted to pick up these other things that were like faster reads. So The Mysteries of Udolpho kind of puts me to sleep, even though I love it. But that is my priority for October, and I'm making tracks. All right. What have you all been reading the month of September? I'm excited to see everyone else's wrap-ups, and I will see y'all in the next video. Thanks. Bye.